Hi everybody, it's week 7, can you believe it? And I think we're moving okay. I've just paused here on a post that Jocelyn started, and it seems like everybody in the class put in their 2 cents on it, so I'm going to linger on it for a minute. But just a few administrative announcements. First one is that at the end of this week, let's see, 4th, 11th, so that'd be 11th of October, I'll send you around your first half grade, the half semester grade for posts. Posts have been looking great, and I'll send that grade around. It'll be the same kind of simple message basically, and because it's all the posts, everybody seems to know exactly what they're doing on the posts. So anyway, I'll send that out in about a week. Monday the 11th, I'll send that note around. It'll be your grade for the first half of the course on posts. And also, some of you have been asking me about written assignment 2. It's due November 15th, and I'll probably put it up there next week. And it's the very same kind of format. Gives you plenty of options to select, including one that a lot of people like. I also put it on the final exam as an option. It's called a cultural autobiography. It gives you a chance to use some of the tools we've been looking at in terms of a very important person in your life, you. So you may find that an interesting question. Okay, that's all I can think of right now. Don't forget also to communicate with me if you got any questions. And let me just go to this post of Jocelyn's now. Here it is, and the title of it was "The Danger of Fake News in the Social Media Era," and she brought up something based on Turkle and also a bunch of really interesting links, especially associated with that Pizzagate thing that came out a while back, where it was about 2 years ago, I think. Wait a minute, 4 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, it's a really interesting thing because it was a completely bogus story. And Jocelyn brought that up, and everybody got onto it. Gunnar and Huda and Claudia, Kayla, Megan, Damali, Mystery, all of you got into it, and I didn't need to put anything on there because I couldn't think of anything as wise as the collective wisdom of all of you. However, I will add this. One of the things in my geek course we talk about all, as I said, the dystopian, the bad news. I don't know why the course keeps filling up. We got about 25 in it this semester, and it's very odd for a not required course to have that many. It's the 4th semester I've done the course, doing it again next semester too. But in there, one of the things we talked, I think it was last week, about troll farms. They're called troll farms. This is where people all over the place. Some of the famous locations for troll farms are Macedonia, Romania, and certain parts of Baltic countries, where people just come in. They're mostly young people who have a pretty good mastery of English, and they collect stories and then invent malicious stories that go with them, and then they send it to some central clearinghouse, which gets them out so they appear on some of the well-known outlets. So that's a very interesting aspect of this topic, and the idea of fake news, that it's manufactured at places like troll farms, plenty of other ways too. And also there's some AI applications now that can very easily manufacture credible fake news. And as you probably have read in the papers, there's this terrible technology that's been around for about 3 years, which we could spend a week on in my course, called deep fake, where you can take a person's face, or maybe if you have any movement of that person, and suddenly fit it into a video of any kind you want, including pornographic videos, and then display it to the world. So deepfake is also part of this, because with deepfake you can send out fake news and have a very graphic element that goes with it. So thanks for being, but I think that was one of the largest, maybe that's the longest, that we had 8 on that one, on that particular post. Sometimes we get as many as 10 or 11, but that's great. That's exactly the idea behind the course. Thank you for that. So let's go to this week. Okay, this week is about these 3 topics: embedding and transmitting culture. There's a really interesting long chapter in Shine that I hope you'll find useful and interesting. It's about that. And then Simon Sinek is one of the better known lecturers on leadership, and a lot of people think he's absolutely full of bananas and beans. He's just, they know not it. But there are a lot of people who think he's wonderful. He said 50 some million, yeah. I just went back and checked, and he has 56 million views on, it's one of the top 10, I think, of all of TED Talks. So his views are interesting, and most people find them very, very helpful. But as always, I give you plenty of articles criticizing and otherwise, and you'll find plenty of your own. Wisdom of crowds you may not know so much about, and I think it's a fascinating topic. So that's why I've assigned that chapter. Please do read it. Surowiecki's basic notion is that a group of people, a group of, like ours, because the four characteristics, if I can remember them, one of the characteristics is they have to be not associated with one another in some kind of normal endeavor. Going to class wouldn't count for that. In other words, you're not working in the same company or in the same opinion group. Secondly, you have to be reasonably intelligent and open, and there are a couple other qualities like that. In other words, they have to be people, you might say, unbiased but well-educated people. You get to come with some of them together, and there are amazing stories about what they can do collectively, much better than the polls, much better at picking stocks, for example, and picking market swings. In the famous case of, which he mentions there, of Thiokol, when that Challenger went down, space capsule with quite a few, I think 6 or 7 people in it, including the school teacher. It was just very, very tragic when that happened about 20 years ago or so. And he makes the point that the stock market, knew immediately what was to blame. And it was a company called Thiokol. And it took a long time for the experts to get together and find out what the part was. But the part, it was an O-ring in the module, and but the stock market knew immediately and absolutely this Thiokol stock tanked. The stock market collectively, the wisdom of that crowd that owned that stock, realized that Thiokol was probably the guilty one, and they were. But there are, if that was just an odd one that you'd just say, well, that's interesting. But he's got dozens and dozens of examples like that from all walks of life. So I think you'll find it useful, because the implication of it is, I use it every season for the Oscars, for picking who wins the Oscars in our class, because we've got a perfect wisdom of crowds kind of group. And we always do better than the pundits do on the Oscars in this class. You know, it doesn't mean that we're any more up to date on those things, but it just means that we know how to use the information we have, and we do a better job collectively as a 20 or 25 person unit than the famous pundits do. So that's an interesting. I think you'll find it very useful. Okay, here's what we've got. The Shine chapter. I'm going to spend a few moments on the Shine chapter because it's really important. He's talking about how leaders embed their beliefs, values, and assumptions. And on page 183, he gives you kind of a roadmap of what he's going to talk about. He says, there are primary embedding mechanisms, how leaders actually do this. He says, what they pay attention to, how they react to critical incidents, how they allocate resources. And keep tuned on this, because I'm coming to a really important one. Deliberate role modeling, teaching, and coaching. How leaders allocate rewards and status, and how leaders recruit, select, promote, and excommunicate. Those are all ways that leaders embed their, those are the primary ways they embed their beliefs, values, and assumptions. And the secondary ways are through organizational design, how they set up the organization. We would call that maybe phase 1, the artifacts. Organizational systems, rites, and rituals of the organization. Are you going to say your organization doesn't have any rites and rituals? Some do, and they're very important. Decisions of physical space, facades, and buildings, very important. Stories about important events and people. I've consulted in several organizations where they still remember a person they refer to as the founder. They don't talk about her or him necessarily by name, but just the founder, great reverence. and then formal statements of organizations, philosophy, creeds, and charters. And you'll find that several companies, I think I've already mentioned, that Marriott, everybody in Marriott at work and probably off work, they have to carry a statement of the goals and the themes of work and the ethics of Marriott. They have to carry that with them. So those are all examples. And I think Shine kind of pulls them all together in an interesting way. I know you'll like that chapter. And then a couple of stories about the Simon Sinek, mostly critical of Simon Sinek. And then there's a good TED lecture, but the only one I think I've got on by Surowiecki, the one who wrote the book on the wisdom of crowds. And incidentally, as there's a Penn University, I did my graduate work at University of Pennsylvania, and this is a professor, I think, at Wharton School where I went, where he refutes the whole idea of wisdom of crowds. So, and the crowdfunding, you know about crowdfunding, and it's become a very important part of our culture. And so I've got a few in there that you're welcome. That's definitely fair game in our study here. And I put 4 asterisks beside the Cynic lecture, and also 2 beside another lecture of his called "What Makes Great Leaders Feel Safe." And I think that how great leaders make you feel safe, and I think that's an important one too. And then Jonathan Haidt, we'll see more of him in the future, but he's a professor whose specialty is looking at the effects of various kinds of social media interventions, and more on crowdfunding. So I think it's a pretty full load we've got this week, but as usual, you can pick and choose. And one other thing, just as a reminder, for those of you who are looking way ahead, written assignment 2 is due November 15th, and the presentation is due October 22nd, so that's about a little less than 3 weeks from now, so plenty of time, but please do it. I know you'll do a really good job. I've given you plenty of samples of it, because this is not just for you, it's for all of us, because the rest of the course after the 22nd, we'll still have a month and a half to go in the course, and we'll be using that as a tutorial for a lot of the things that we'll be examining. So you're contributing to the group, the class, our learning experience when you do that. So I think that's about it. You're doing fine in the course. As I said, the written assignment 1 was absolutely fabulous. I was so impressed with the work that you did on it. And if you haven't heard back from me, shame on me, because I tried to get everything back in a day or 2. But if you haven't heard back from me, please contact me immediately, and I will get your comments back to you. Thanks again. Hope it's a good week 7.